Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Sorry, I'm moving the laptop way too much. Welcome to our Facebook Live. I believe I'm live. I should get used to this. This is my 4th Facebook Live, so I think I've got the hang of it. How's everyone doing? Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone is having a great week thus far. So thank you. Thank you again for joining. Last week we had to reschedule our live. So sorry if you tuned in and we were not able to broadcast. There were some things that came up that were out of our control. However, we are back this week. And we have a special guest. We're very excited about this episode. For the ones that have been joining us for, the past few weeks, again, we are going over the whole process in detail. That way you're well informed and you can, ask us any questions if you have any. So today we are going to talk about appraisals. So there's a lot of confusion. There are a lot of misconceptions about appraisals and home inspections. So we wanted to integrate this one in our Facebook Lives. And of course, have a guest, have a professional join us so he can better explain what an appraisal is and tell us everything that happens behind doors, So we have a special guest. Let me see if he is ready. So give me 1 second. I am going to have him join. Actually, I may have lost him, but I'll find him. Just give me a second. He's not on. He was on, and I've lost him. So give me 1 second and let me see. Andrea, if you could help reach out to him and see if he can join, because he has actually left the waiting room. Let's see. Sorry, guys. We're having a little technical difficulties, but we're going to get this straightened out. Have him join us. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, I am here and he should be on the waiting room, but he's not. So we're going to ask him to log off and then join, and hopefully that works. Marvelous. Let's see. Let's see if I can find him. All right. So how's everyone's week been? Does everyone have their Christmas tree up? I actually just put mine on. I put mine up this past weekend. So I'm excited. I haven't had a Christmas tree in a couple of years. Also, for the ones that are following us, oh, I think he's here. We do have a Christmas tree contest. So for all of our clients who have beautiful Christmas trees in their new homes, please submit your Christmas trees. You will be entered to win a 55-inch TV. This is our second year doing this. Last year was a success. We had a lot of beautiful trees that were submitted. And yeah, you submit your Christmas tree. You have until the 10th to submit it. And then after that, we're going to post up the Christmas trees, and your friends and your family will be able to vote on the Christmas tree that they like the most. Will hopefully be yours. And then we're going to announce the winner. I forgot the date, but just check on our social media and you'll have all of the important dates there. And then whoever receives the most votes will receive will win the 55-inch TV. So please post your Christmas trees, tag us on your social media, and that is how you will be able to enter the contest. So, all right, we are going to have Hank join us. Okay. So Hank is joining us. Hi, Hank. Hello. We're going to give it a couple. I think your audio is connecting. Can you hear us? I'm actually not able to hear you. Perhaps it's
How about now? Maybe there was a phone call in process. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. So
my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going over the episodes, and while we were waiting for you, I know something happened. You were in the waiting room, but then when I wanted to have you join us, for some reason you weren't there, but we were able to figure it out. So that's perfect. And I was just actually telling our viewers that we have a Christmas tree contest for all of our clients. So all they have to do is post a picture of their Christmas tree, and their friends and families can vote, and then they'll win. The winner will win a 55-inch TV. So,
oh my goodness, what a nice treat!
Yeah, absolutely. Great for the holidays, right? Who doesn't want a 55-inch TV?
That's right. You've got the spirit of giving. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. Great. So, so as I had mentioned, we have a special guest. His name is Frank Lepore. Is that correct? Did I pronounce it correctly?
You got it right.
Perfect. And Frank is an appraisal. So I am going to give Frank the mic. Frank, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I started in the banking business actually in my 20s, and while in the banking business, I learned the mortgage side of the business. So that was the first time I had any contact with the appraisal world. But first I did residential loans, and back then it was a big deal if you did something called home improvement loans, where people would want to remodel but not necessarily move. And so we used to have loans for people to redo their kitchens and baths. And so I got to see some of what it took to put money into property in terms of what kind of value return people would get. And eventually, one of the appraisers that I used to send my appraisal work to asked me if I wanted to work for him. And then I went to work in the appraisal business. I should mention, I spent a little time selling real estate for a couple of builders in the south suburbs too. And I would do open houses on the weekends when they needed a little break. So I did stick my toe, and I'd stick my toe in the water on the sales side too. So,
wonderful.
Yeah. So I feel like I had a nice broad kind of background when I got started, and it helped me get going. I worked for this appraisal company for a couple of years, and he knew I was ready to kind of branch out on my own. So by my roughly, early to mid 30s, I started my own appraisal business, and it's almost been 30 years now. It'll be 30 years next year for me that I'll have been doing appraisal work. So I like the work. People I don't know about you, but people are like, oh, it must be so interesting to see all these houses. And I'm like, well, yeah, a lot of houses, not every house.
Right, exactly.
Some are scary, but that's
Yes.
interesting too sometimes. But I like what I do, and I like the fact that it combines some work in the office with work out in the field, and it's the balance that I always wanted. So it's worked out well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with your history starting in the bank industry, and then, you know, kind of also being in the real estate, being a real estate agent for a little bit, you bring a lot of value, most definitely. So with opening up your own company, do you have a team? Do you have other appraisals?
So I was independent. I was independent for the longest time, which meant I just worked pretty much for myself. I had trained a few people along the way that were associates within my business. And there was never more than 2 or 3 at a time. Because the way this business tends to be, Nancy, is once someone gets just enough training, they really want to be on their own, which is, you know, that's just the nature of people that tend to work in this type of field. So I think over the years, I believe I trained maybe 6 people. But the opportunity about 7 years came up, almost 8 years ago, that one of the banking groups that I do a lot of work with, Bay Equity, asked me to manage a group of appraisers in Northern Illinois in order to better coordinate the flow of work between the appraiser, the realtor, the bank, and the client. And so I decided to jump into, they call it appraisal management. So it's like a second company. I still have my individual company when I do my own work. And I have the appraisal management company, which has 18 appraisers in it. And all these appraisers, we've selected appraisers that some are referrals from the banking industry. Some are referrals from realtors that had done a high degree of volume and recognized certain appraisers as doing a more efficient and professional job. So just about everybody in this group has, oh gosh, 15 or more years experience. And we try very hard to use appraisers for assignments within, you know, 10, 12 miles at the most. Sometimes in your profession, you show up to show a home and let an appraiser in, and they tell you they're from 28 miles away. And right away, you get a little question mark in your head, like, does this guy really know my Berwyn bungalow or what have you?
Correct. Yeah, the market in this area, the buildings. Yeah.
So I think we're in a position where generally we you know, put everybody at a comfortable level with the professionalism. You know, nothing is perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's a very good group of people that I trust.
Nice, wonderful. Okay, so we did want to have this live to provide our viewers with more knowledge and the difference on what a home inspection and an appraisal is, because a lot of times people get these mixed, right? Yes, they are both inspections. However, they're for 2 very different things. So we'll start with the home inspection, since that's something that we covered in our past episodes for the ones that are joining us again. In episode 4, we went over what a home inspection is and what it entails. Okay. And who does a home inspection, who has to be a person who who's got a certification to be an inspector.
Right, licensed.
Correct, a licensed inspector. So of course they look at the property, at the condition of the property. If it's safe, if it's livable, are there some things that need to be, you know, repaired or something that we need to maybe have the seller his attention on, right? Have the seller fix or anything. Can you go over what an appraisal is and how that differs from a home inspection?
Absolutely. And it's good. The order you did this makes all the sense in the world, because almost always the inspection is done first.
Absolutely.
So that the buyer has a comfort level to move to the next step, which is what we do. So it makes all the sense in the world. So a lot of times, some of the issues that we might see now, there is some overlap between what we see and what the inspector sees. The inspector gets a little deeper into it because they're up in the attic looking at roof lines and things of those. Now we look at the roof, but we give it what I would call a more cursory look. We have a general look to see if there's watermarks or things like that. When we get, excuse me, when we get an appraisal assignment, the first job we have is we're supposed to identify the property. So it's our job to get on the computer and we do a little research first. We look up the history of the property. If it's listed with an agent, we print up the listing. We will, so many professionals now will put 30, sometimes 40 pictures up there. We'll look through the pictures. So oftentimes we have a very good feel for what we're going out to look at ahead of time. And sometimes we can even pull some information on sales in the area. So we have a good understanding if there's support for the price. So it's our job to look over the order from the bank, the contract that was signed. We have to read through the contract, make sure there's nothing unusual about it. We have to read through the disclosure because often that disclosure identifies some items that we might need to take a second look at.
Of course, the property disclosures.
We look at the property records online from the county and the listing. So that's our little packet that we start out with. So the first thing we do is identify the assignment and the type of property. That's how we get started. We make our appointment with the agent. Most times we meet with the agent if they are available. Sometimes an agent will tell us, give us access to the property with a key box code, or sometimes they'll say the seller will let you in. But once we make that appointment, our inspection is, first the exterior of the property. We take photos of all angles of the property from the front and sides. If it's got a detached garage, we take pictures of that as well. We look over the roof, we look at windows, and if anything has damage, we have to take a picture of it, whether it's a conventional type loan or an FHA loan. That in our reports, they're called deferred maintenance, means they just waited too long to maintain this item. And the most common things that jump out at us are when we look at roofs. If the shingles are smiling at us, that means they're getting tired and old. So we might say we saw that the roof is worn, but we went inside and there's no damage. So it means there's a little life left in it, but we have to mention these things.
Right.
And it's up to the buyer and the bank if they're going to consider talking about a remedy. Oftentimes when the market was so red hot, people were buying things that were a little rougher around the edges and thought, we'll take care of this. We just want that house,
Right.
When the market gets tighter, sellers tend to have to fix a little more. So, so those are the kind of things we look for on the outside. We look at windows. We don't, if the concrete is cracked and there's a tripping hazard, we check railings, things like that.
Okay.
When we get inside, it's more about condition and updating, because we give condition ratings on reports. The Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buy most of these loans, as well as FHA. And they ask for a condition rating. It's a little C with a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 1 means new, 2 means rehab, 3 is in good shape, 4 is okay, but might have some things to do. 5 is a no-no and 6 is a no-no. The banks won't take those. But anyway, we have to determine as we look at things, floors, trim, walls, and then the biggies are kitchens and bathrooms. We have to determine what kind of condition those are in, and they're very interested in that. So because of that, we take a picture of every room. And not so it helps the bank, what I say, the reader of the report, which is usually a bank for the purpose of our discussion, a mortgage transaction. Yes. It helps the reader of the report decide how comfortable they are with the property. Because when these people are going to get the loan, it's not just about their jobs and their credit. The biggest collateral is this building, and the bank, if someone's putting 5% down, that means the bank's the 95% partner. That's a big chunk of money. So, so those are the things we look at inside. Now, it's not the same as an inspection. We don't test a lot of things. For FHA, we make sure the water's running. We make sure the utilities and the appliances operate. We don't say whether, you know, they're good or bad. We say they were observed and they operate. A very, very important one. And of course, it's a law in our state that smoke and CO detectors have to be near the sleep areas. And that's one we insist that has to be fixed.
Yeah,
no matter what kind of
you're bringing great points. This is something that you know, obviously not a lot of viewers may be aware, but there are some differences depending on the type of loan you have. So with FHA, it's a little stricter. You look at other points that you may not look into, you know, if it were a conventional loan. I would love to get more into detail with that. But before we get into that, you did mention the appraisal, how it is ordered. Now, can you go a little bit more into detail before we go into the types of the differences in the financing and how the appraisals are done with that? Who orders the appraisal?
It's ordered generally in a mortgage transaction, which is typical. It's ordered by the bank. By the bank. And the bank sends it through, in our case, a management company. So they request it. It comes through a management company, and that is me in this case for our example today. So, and it's up to me to get that appraisal assignment to an appraiser in the market area that's well-versed in that type of property and that type of location. So even though your buyer, when they make an application fee with a mortgage company, is paying, usually they're paying for credit reports and appraisals, even though they're putting down, maybe $450 for an appraisal, it actually becomes the property of the bank. And the bank not only gets it, but at the same time with our company, the bank gets it, and at the same time, the buyer gets it. So they're both reading it at the same time if there's questions. It just means that the reason it's property of the bank is so the buyer just can't take it from bank to bank to bank to say, can you give me a better deal? Can you give me a better deal? In the state of Illinois, they said, we can't have that. So it's actually a state law that the bank is the client by definition, even though the buyer is entitled to the report.
I see. Thank you for explaining that. I think a lot of buyers are not aware of that, or they, like you said, they probably think that they can take this appraisal and go to another bank, but that is not the case.
Yeah, there's a little exception with FHA, is that the FHA appraisal stays with the property over a period of 3 to 6 months, depending on some certain situations. And in that case, if somebody winds up going to another bank, that appraisal can stick with the property for some period of time, but that's unusual for that to happen. Okay. So now, since we're talking about, and I know you started going into that a little bit more, let's talk about, the differences depending on the financing. So you talked a little bit about FHA, some of the things that you look at if it's an FHA loan, and then, if you can explain a little bit about that, and then also go into what do you mean that it sticks to the property if it's an FHA? Okay. Well, the FHA, when an FHA appraisal is done, there's just a few more things that are specifically looked at that the FHA insists be in good order with the property. They insist that the outlets in the bath and kitchen areas have the GFI interceptor, meaning if there are any water splashes or creates a short, that it pops right there. It doesn't run through the house. And that's the outlet that has 2 little buttons in the middle of it. So they're almost always in the kitchens and bathrooms, sometimes in a laundry area.
Garages.
And they have to be any outside outlet because of the elements, the weather. Same thing, outside outlets, the garages, things like that. So anything outside would have to have that interceptor also. They don't want to see any peeling paint on older properties.
Why is that?
Lead paint used to exist prior to 1978. So if a house is built and it's probably been painted over 30 times, but if the house is predates that, and there's peeling paint, it has to be scraped, cleaned up, primed, and painted again. That's always a big one. They don't want any safety issues. Even uneven concrete that might be cracked, that would be a tripping hazard, is a problem. Stairs that are tipped the wrong way. And they insist on railings in any stair areas. Very important, whether it's to the basement, to an attic, or on the outside. Any areas like that require railings. Those are like the biggest issues. Obviously, there's times we need to bring in an expert sometimes. If you go in the basement, you see the black spots on the wall, that could be a mold issue.
Right.
If you see water stains on the floor, it may need a foundation inspection. So FHA just takes things a little bit farther. And again, we make sure all the utilities are on, that the appliances at least turn on. We're not going to run your washer and dryer for 45 minutes, but we make sure those things do go on it and shut back off.
Yep. So the bank has ordered the appraisal, the buyer has paid for it. The appraisal has been completed. So how long does it take for the buyer or for the bank to receive the appraisal report?
The usual timing is an appraiser gets an assignment, does a couple days of research, couple days to get it scheduled, couple days to finish. So, 5 or 6 business days with the kind of volume we're dealing right now is pretty normal. So I guess, worst case, that could go out 7 or 8 days. But usually right now, the only thing that's against us now is daylight. We have less daylight, so we can't do any evening appointments. But so usually the timeline though is, I always say 2, 2, 2. So 6 days at the most. It can be sooner. And we do, the bank can tell us when it's a rush type deal. They actually bump the fee a little bit in that scenario. But that's usually the timeline. And then so the appraiser will get it back to me. I give it a quick review and I get it to the banks. From the time I get it, I spend no more than an hour and a half getting it to the bank. Now, once the bank has it, their underwriters review it. And if they have any issues, they'll come back, ask the appraiser, could you tell us, it looks like a window's broken. It looks like, it looks like the stairs are crooked. If they have any concern like that, they might throw it back to the appraiser to get some things clarified.
Yes.
But usually everything is typically done within about a week at this volume level. When things were crazy, it was taking a little longer. It was taking closer to 10, 11 days.
Absolutely. I remember that 2 years ago. First, it would take a while to get it scheduled because appraisers were so busy. And then, of course, time for the appraisal to get that report back. So yes, I remember we'd have to wait a long time for that. So buyers and sellers know that even though once an appraisal is completed, there's still going on, stuff behind doors. The appraisal needs to complete that report. So that's why it takes, a week, like Hank mentioned, because they're still working on it. They're still, looking at the property. They're still reviewing their notes, looking at the pictures, putting the report together. So they're working on that. Okay. So once the report is received, and the buyer is able to review it with their loan officer and their realtor, well, mostly loan officer. So let's say, and this has happened before, that the property does not appraise. So what does that mean? When a property doesn't appraise, it's let's say we submitted an offer for a property that was, $350. We got under contract for $350, and the appraisal report comes back and they say, well, no, it actually appraised for $300. So there's a few things that happen in cases like these. The seller has the option to come down on the price to meet the appraisal value of $300. 2, the buyer has the option to make up the difference, right? Because the loan is not going to let you borrow more money than what it appraised for. So this happened a lot 2 years ago when we were fighting for properties and the buyers had to outbid many other buyers. So a lot of times you offered over asking by a lot. So some buyers, we did have clients that they really love the property, and if it didn't appraise, it still made sense for them. They would have to make up the difference, right? So that is a second option. And then a third is also that we always try to do this is for the buyer and the seller to come into an agreement, right? If for any reason the seller doesn't want to come down on the price, we always try to negotiate so both the seller and the buyer come to an agreement and perhaps meet halfway. So the seller can lower the price a little, the buyer can bring up the difference if they absolutely love the property. But there's also another option. Can you tell us about that, that fourth?
Yeah, we've had it come up. Matter of fact, there was one today and it worked out. But there's a process if the seller and the buyer and their agents really believe that the appraiser may have missed something. Maybe their appraiser's opinion of value is for some reason didn't see a certain sale that they're aware of. There's something called the rebuttal process. And a small report can be prepared, usually by the agent. That's then the agent gives it to the loan officer, and they turn in that report to us, and we get it to the appraiser. And what the information is usually additional sales data or some information that may have been lacking for some reason when the appraiser looked at the house. We've had listings with maybe just one PIN number, like tax ID number, and there were 2 pins on the property. And for some reason, there's another 20 feet that just wasn't involved in the process. And that makes it's a bigger lot. It should have been adjusted for. So if there's some adjustment that might need to be tweaked or made, or another sale to be considered, and the appraiser agrees that those changes might be necessary, then that rebuttal can result in the appraiser's original opinion of value being changed. And we had one today up in the O'Hare area. I'm happy to tell you this. I forgot to mention it, but earlier. But it was a difference between, like, just for the sake of round numbers, the price was $340. The appraiser was $325, and they provided some information not only about the lot size and some work that was done, but one other sale that happened to be by owner that didn't show up on the MLS. And the combination of those things got us to the actual contract price that was offered. So it can happen. It doesn't happen all the time, because the appraiser might say, well, you sent me these sales, but I feel like the conditions are different, you know, and because condition of property can be very subjective. Sometimes properties are updated, but not renovated. And those variances can be 5% sometimes in terms of quality and condition. But the rebuttal process exists to make revisions to report, make corrections to report, and at least to give the appraiser another opportunity to review information that could potentially change things.
Yes, very true. I mean, and obviously to our buyers, you know, if we believe that we can rebuttal, we will most definitely do that for you. As Hank mentioned, you know, I mean, in reality, you know, we're humans, we make mistakes, or sometimes there's, you know, certain information out there that's not completely given to the appraiser. So yes, there is that option. Now for our sellers, and this is something that you can probably help us out with as well. As a listing agent, when we meet the appraisal, we, at least in our team, we like to put together an appraisal package, which we try to give you as much information as possible, as, you know, all the information we have. Now, and that we call this a CMA, right? We have CMAs that we give you to review. How do you feel about the CMAs? Can you tell us?
Okay. Well, I welcome it, because especially when it was tough on pricing and contracts, and, you know, offers were aggressive in order to, you know, get a property. I needed to know the motivations for the pricing and the justification for the pricing. And, you know, our example, you know, of what happened today was, you know, that it worked out. Sometimes it doesn't always get right to that top price, but it gets closer, and that's important too. But I think anytime you can provide data that helps clear up for an appraiser how the number got to where it got is highly important. Now, there are some groups, and I don't think of anybody in my group that doesn't want to be accepting of that information. And I know of nobody. I hope it hasn't happened. But there are appraisers out in the field. They would love nothing more than to just see empty houses, nobody around, get in, get out, let them think what they think. And that's the problem sometimes when people work independently or alone, is you tend to think everything you're doing is correct. And there's nobody around to kind of pepper you with a little information to say, there might be another way to look at things. I welcome the CMA for the most part. I think realtors and appraisers are on the same page. We want to find the same type of property as best we can, the same condition, same bedrooms, same bathrooms, same finishes if there's a basement finish, a garage space. We want to find the most comparable we can to determine pricing. You want to do that to determine pricing, and we want to do it to determine value. Our job, though, when we walk in the property and complete our report, is to say what we think it's worth on that day. And your job's a little different because you're prospecting what things will happen between that day and the time you sell. Yes. So it's a little different, but for the most part, we should be looking at the same type properties for the basis of comparison. I welcome it.
Great, great. We haven't encountered any appraisers that don't. However, I have heard from other industry partners stories like that. So that's why I kind of wanted to ask you. So I think that's all for today. You've actually given us a lot of great information. I'm sure our viewers have learned a lot today. I believe we've covered all of it. Is there anything else that you believe we've not gone over?
I think I think no, I think we've touched all the high points for the most part. And
absolutely.
I'm glad I had to have the chance to talk to you. Most appraisers don't get this opportunity. They just put us in our little office and in our cave and make us do our reports. But no, I appreciate, Nancy, that we got to spend a little time, and I hope it helps. And
absolutely.
And again, I consider myself kind of a referral partner with ROC, and Eddie has been good in terms of being very professional with me. Over time, we've referred people to each other. So no, I appreciate the relationship. It's a healthy thing.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you accepting our invitation. As I mentioned, I know this video is of value to many realtors and clients, whether they be buyers or sellers. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy.
To our viewers, whomever may have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can always leave a comment, or you can DM me directly. If you have any questions directly for Hank, maybe, or do you have a Facebook, Hank?
Yes, it's actually, it's under professional appraisal.
Okay.
And I also have a personal one. I mean, somebody wanted to look and send me a message. It's Hank Lepore, Lepore.
Marvelous. Okay. Yeah. So, thank you again to our viewers for joining us. Next week, Tuesday, we will be live again, and we're actually getting close to the end of our episode. So next week, we're going to go over the final walkthrough, what that entails, and we'll go over a lot of little details. So please join us next week, Tuesday, again at 6 p.m. And as I mentioned, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Hank, again. If you have any questions, reach out, and have a great evening.
You too, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.